talking about? Oh, the story of Kazuma Kuwabara, as told by yours truly, the Green Angel. So, he goes to the same school as Yusuke, Sariaski Junior High. And there, he's a delinquent just like Yusuke. And he also wears a different shade of blue. You know, Yusuke wears that green jumpsuit, and everybody knows him as Yusuke Urameshi, the great Urameshi. Nobody can kick his ass. He's, dangerous. He skips school all the time. He tells the teacher, like, to his face that he's, like, weak, he's boring, and other things, and then he leaves school. Zuma Kuwabara has friends at school. He does stuff, too. He fights other people from other schools. That's what he does. See, Zuma Kuwabara has a gang of friends around him. And he calls to his friends. And when he sees Yusuke, he's like, why doesn't this guy want to be my friend? And he comes to find out that, he knows, Kuzuma Kobara knows, he's weaker than Yusuke. Yusuke sees shit a different way than he does. He's not afraid to be alone, where Kuwabara has his friends around at all times. But Kuwabara cares about his friends deeply. See, when Yusuke died, he had nobody to fight against him anymore. But he was still like that could beat him anyways. Nobody could beat him. Everybody else is too weak. And his crew was like roaming the streets. But the teacher was like, hey, you fight too much. You gotta fight for at least, and you're failing in school, basically. You guys are failing. You guys have bad grades. This is not cool. You guys need to shape up in other things if you don't want to get kicked out of the school. On your next test, you have to have at least a 75% to pass. And they were like, oh, fuck. Like, I got this grade and this grade. Kuwabara had like a 12 or something on his last test, and they were like worried. And also, this friend Okubo was, a guy who needed to have a passing grade, not just to stay in school, but to have his job. Because his job was, to hold down for his family too. I need the money so, I can take care of my family members and shit, and Kuwabara heard that and was like, okay, that's all right. I won't fight anybody for a week. I'll take the teacher up on his, little challenge for me. I won't even throw one punch. And they were like, you gotta be kidding, Kuwabara. You fight every day. You can lie and act like you never did anything. He's like, nope. A man's promise is a man's promise. And he did that. And he stuck to it too. Because then he was walking home and these other guys he would usually beat up by himself, or with his group, they started jumping him. They were like, hey, I want to run that shit with you. And then Kuwabara was like, you know what? I can't fight you today. Take me, under this, bridge and, do what you want to me. Punch me, kick me, bite me, whatever you need to do. But make it quick because I have to, like, get the fuck out of here. And then they did that. They whooped his ass, because he allowed them to, And then he went back to school and his friend was like, what the fuck? Why are you all beat up? You didn't have to do that shit for me. And Kuwabara was like, nah, it's fine. A deal's a deal and I have to do this. and he was there like that. And, Yusuke saw him and he was like, damn, Kuwabara actually is a good guy. He ain't just some guy that fucks around with me and tries to, like, test me all the time. And he did that. And then he was like, all right, now all I have to do is study. And Kuwabara's not the studying sort. He stayed up all night to study, and then Yusuke appeared to him in a dream because he, like, fell asleep. Like, all fucking kids who are like that, who are, like, not the best at school do that. And he was like, oh, fuck, I'll go into his dream and wake him up. Hey, Kuwabara, you gotta, like, keep doing your test and know what that book says. And he went. the next day to take his test, people were trying to run his ass down again. They're like, I heard Kuwabara can't fight for a week. Let's go run that shit with him real quick. Let's go fuck with him. Why he can't do shit. But then Yusuke took control of somebody's body and saved Kuwabara. Kuwabara took the test and he actually passed. Not with flying colors, but he got the bare minimum he could get. He got exactly what he needed to pass. However, the teacher was a little bitch and was playing games with his authority. He was like, that brat got a good grade. I don't like that he got a good grade. I was expecting him to fail. So I'm gonna write what I think he should have. Then the principal found out and was like, you're a little bitch. You can't be fucking with the student's future like that. You can't tell him that he has bad grades when he actually has good grades. You fucked around too much. The principal put him in line after Kuwabara almost fucking killed him for lying. Because Kuwabara checked his answers too after the test was over. But yeah, so Kuwabara then goes and he's like, okay. He gets his body taken over by Yusuke. Yusuke tells Keiko that he'll be brought back to life and other things. Yusuke leaves Kuwabara's body and he gets slapped by Keiko. And he's like, why did I get slapped? Well, probably because I'm talking to a pretty girl that I don't know. And she was like, yeah, you got slapped because of that. And then he was like, and then he left. And then Yusuke got brought back to life. But then Kuwabara was in another bond with another guy. A guy that was like, hey, you know, you want your cat back called Ikichi? You know, Yusuke thought it was a girl because Ikichi sounds like a cute girl's name, but it's a cat's name. And he's like, yo, give me my cat back. You know, he's like, go steal this from a store. And this guy was possessed by a demon and told Kuwabara to go steal some shit from the store. Kuwabara came back with buying it. He bought it for him. And he was like, no, I told you to steal that from the store. You ain't doing shit right. Now we'll kill your cat. And then Yusuke jumped in and saved him and saved his cat. And then, you know, other things happened. Later on, though, skip ahead a little bit, and Yusuke is going to Genkai's compound, right? And there, Kuwabara's there too. Kuwabara's like, well, I'm always sensing weird shit, you know, ghosts and other things. Hearing like old ladies say shit and different kind of spirits. So I came to Genkai to like, you know, see if he can turn down these like weird fucking powers that I have. You know, I can sense shit that I'm not trying to really sense. I'm trying to just, you know, go to school and fuck around like I usually do. And he was like, all right, well, you're here for whatever reason and other things. We're here together, whatever. I'll fight you if I have to or whatever. And they go into the tournament, or they go and they do little Genkai's, like little games and shit to gauge their powers and stuff. And he runs through the woods. He actually gets through the woods before Yusuke, and then they run in the tournament. And in the tournament, Kuwabara fights against a samurai. I think it's Miyamoto, or is it um, Kojiro Sasaki? Like he has one of those guys' names. You know, those swordsmen from Japan that are legendary. Um, he was fighting against him. He got his ass like worn. See, they were fighting in the dark too. Genkai made it like difficult, so that they have to use their like spirit awareness and all that extra stuff. Um, Kuwabara was getting his ass whooped with that stick. Boom, 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 boom. And then like the guy hit him so hard that the stick broke, like, or not the stick, but the wooden katana broke. Boom! And Kumar was like, "Oh, fuck!" You know, if he runs at me again with another barrage, I'm dead. You know, and he grabbed the piece that broke off and it materialized. The spirit sword, spirit sword. It materialized. It materialized. And when it materialized, Musashi was like, "What the fuck is that?" And he's like, "I don't know, but take this." And he slashed him once, and that's how he won. And then, you know, later on in the tournament, in the semifinals, he had to fight against Shorin. See, Shorin was losing at first when he materialized his spirit sword, and he was like, but then Shorin showed his true colors, as Shorin was actually Rando in disguise as some boy who was playing game, deceitful acts of sorts, and Kuwabara was like, oh fuck, he got shrunk down, and then he got his bones crushed, broke his fucking arm and everything, and he was like sitting out while Yusuke was fighting against Rando. But then Yusuke, he fell into a pond full of piranhas, basically demon piranhas, and Kuwabara's spirit came out of him like, psh, and he went down to save Yusuke, and then the spirit returned to him, and he was like, okay, Yusuke's all right, and Yusuke then defeated Rando, and then after that, um, Yusuke trained with Genkai for a couple months or weeks, and then uh, he got another call, and he had to go to Maze Castle. He brought Kuwabara with him because Kuwabara, wanted to come, and he actually proved himself that he could handle like some business a little bit. So he's like, all right, as long as you ain't dragging me down too much because I have a job, you can come with me and help me out. And they jump down into the portal to Maze Castle. So wait, they go through Maze Castle, and Kuwabara is there with Yusuke, but also Hiei and Kurama are there too, to help out because they have experience fighting demons too, and they want to get their like shit taken care of with like Koenma. They don't want Koenma on their dick no more. Uh, about being bad demons, they can be demons that help out a little bit. Kuwabara fights against Byakko in the cave. Byakko the White Tiger, and Byakko the White Tiger sicked some tigers on him. These cats, Kuwabara like tied them up, chained them up to the tower, and then he was fighting against Byakko himself. He had a hard time with him. Um, the roar of a tiger is said to like stun its prey, like for real. Like it has the ability to do that, like on some like real shit. Like it roars like, and it like stuns its prey, like they can't move. They freeze. It kind of like his Byaku's ability kind of works like that. Except it like drained away like Kuwabara's power, and he roared, and then Kuwabara was like, oh, and they were like, oh no, Kuwabara. But Kuwabara got back up and slashed him like, psst. And he was like, oh, and he retreated to his lair, and then in his lair there was like lava, and then like these like rocks that he like hops on to stay out of the lava, and they were fighting like that, boom, 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 fighting while they're jumping. He was shooting at like um, hairballs that were like made of fire. At Kuwabara, and he was like, "Oh shit!" Then he like he was able to knock him into the lava, and he almost fell in himself. But he was like hanging on by his hand, and he was like, "Hey, help me out!" They helped him out, and then they got away. They got up, and they went through the next Saint Beast, and then Yusuke went to fight the leader of the Saint Beast, and he was fighting outside with Hiei and Kurama against these um, humanoid like monster things, artificial humans, fighting against them. And after that, they went their separate ways for a little bit again, and like back to school and all that shit. But then, he got another call, and this time Kuwabara was interested, as it was the beauty Yukina that was in need of being saved, and he was like, okay, well I have to save Yukina, and Yukina. And Yukina needed help, so um, Kuwabara was like, "Don't worry, I can sense you from here, and it's cool. I'm on my way." And they were like, "Okay, we have a job to do and other things." So they went to Tarukune's compound, and Kuwabara was slaying demons with his sword. And then they get past all these fucking demons, right? And then they get to the Tagora brothers. The Tagora brothers were like known for like standing on fucking business, even in the demon world. They were like feared amongst like demons who were like in human world. They were like, oh fuck, these are the Tagora brothers. They don't fuck around when they come to town. And Tarukane had them as hired muscle, to keep, them away from Yukina because they knew that he was coming. Um, so Kuwabara's fighting against Tagoro with Yusuke, and he almost like gets his ass whooped. As the girl is powerful, even in like 30% form. Um, and Yusuke was like, powerful enough to shoot him with a spirit gun and like defeat him. Defeat him. But he wasn't defeated. He just acted like he was. And Kuwabara was, a savior. Yukina saw him as that, and he was like, "Hey, are you okay? Do you need healed and other things?" And he was like, "Oh, thanks. You saw that I came to rescue you and other stuff. But then she went back to, living as an ice, apparition somewhere else, and Kuwabara was just wondering about her for some time. But then, some things happened. Tagore was still alive, and Yusuke was like, I probably could use your help on this one too. Even though you're weaker than me and other things, I'm pretty sure you can slay some weaker demons and shit. So you'll be one of the guys in the dark tournament. And he was like, okay, I'll train with Hiei and Kurama. They can whip me into shape. And he went to train with Genkai. So they trained, and then they went to Hanging Neck Island for the dark tournament like a couple months later. And there they went into the, suite, the one that because they were honored guests. They're like, you're the guests of the dark tournament this year. You guys get to sleep in this place before you die to the girl. Now, we'll treat you well. And I was like, okay, we'll sleep in here, and we'll play cards and other things. So they were doing that. The ladies were there too. Shizuru, his sister, was there. Um, Keiko was there, and of course, Team Urameshi, everybody was fighting. But Yusuke was asleep, and then they came in, Ziru and Renku. Renku was playing games, like standing on shit that he wasn't supposed to, and stuff. See, he's a little boy, who likes to play games with yo-yos. Um, and then Ziru was a guy, and Ziru was like, okay, well, you know, he made the cup so hot that it like cracked, but it cracked in a way that was like crazy, like in half. Um, and he was like, "Yo, you cut the fucking cup in half with your heat or something." He was able to see some other things that other people weren't able to see because he has a Dragon eye. But um, he was like, Zero was like, "We'll kill you tomorrow in the tournament. There's no reason for you to like, get too confident." Um, and they left. And then the next day, Kuwabara was the first fight. Kuwabara versus Renku. So Renku and Kuwabara were fighting. Kuwabara was using a spirit sword. He was using demon yo-yo. Um, he was hitting Kuwabara, but Kuwabara, when he hit Renku, Renku was like, "Damn, this human's actually like fucking. He hurts me and shit." I gotta, I gotta get away from this guy and shit. He was like, he had to like send Kuwabara up above the stadium and like try to drop him from all the way up in the sky. He was like, "I'll send you all the way up here and then drop you down." And Kuwabara was like, "Oh fuck, he's trying to kill me." And he was like, "Spirits, get lost." Boom. And he shot himself at Renku, and then he hit him because he was able to make the sword go a different way and hit him from the side. Like, boom. And then he got hit by the yo-yo, and he got taken out of the stadium, like out of the ring. Two started counting, but then Renku was smart, and he was like, "Okay, I'll wrap him up in my yo-yo and keep him outside the ring." It went down, counted all the way to 10. He lost. And they were like, "Damn, Kuwabara, you lost the first match for us." Then he was upset. But it was all right because the next match was against Garaki. See, Garaki was playing games with the lives of humans. He had them under brainwashing techniques. See, Garaki saw them and said, you know, "You're healthy, dojo men, he calls to martial arts and other stuff. You know, your sensei could use the money and stuff. See, if you work for me and you're a test subject, I can get you the money that you need to heal your sensei. I know you care and other things, so you gotta like let me operate on you and do certain things. Basically become my slaves and shit." And he did that, and he was controlling them for the like dark tournament, and they were like running around fighting. Kuwabara was like, "I can sense them, like their actual selves and shit." He's like, "These guys don't really want to fight us, y'all. They're under certain fucking uh hypnosis, you know a machine tied to their back. They're even crying and shit. I can see it." And they started crying, and then they were like, "Oh fuck, he Kuwabara's not wrong, but we still have to win this shit. We can't just let them win." um And he was like, yeah, but Kuwabara was done. So he was like, yo, just attack me. Attack me and don't worry about it. Let your anger out on me. And they're like, oh. And then he was like fucked up for a while. He was out. And then they had to handle that shit. Genkai and Yusuke. But then after that, they went against the Shinobi of Spirit World. And the Shinobi of Spirit World, um, Kurama held down against two of them. Then he got taken out. Yusuke took that guy out, and he took down Jin the Windmaster as well. But then Risho stepped up, the rock of the group, the stone guy, the stone shinobi. And he was like, I can beat this guy. Called Kazuma Kuwabara. He's just the weakest link on his team. And he ain't even healed. And he wasn't healed from the fight with the other guys. He was like, but somebody needs to step up and fight because Yusuke can't fight. Kuwabara can't fight. Or not Kuwabara, but Kurama can't fight. And then Hiei and Genkai are in the healing chamber. They're still like not able to fight either. So I have to step up and fight. And he started to step up and fight, but he was, getting his ass whooped at first. But he played it clever and other things, and he was able to swing him out of the ring, hit him like a baseball out of the ring, home run, and got him the fuck out of there. And that's why he got his first dub in the dark tournament. And he was like, okay, cool. He's stunning for Yukina and other things, but then they had to get to the semifinals. They were against Team Yura Togi, and those guys had some players on it. But Yusuke wasn't there, and Genkai wasn't there, because Genkai was teaching Yusuke how to use Spirit Orb technique. They were outside doing shit, special time, kind of training. And then Kuwabara and Hiei and Kurama were like, we're in this shit. We'll run this shit, the three of us, against all five of those guys. We'll win. Um, and then Kuwabara ended up having to fight Shishi Wakamaru. Shishi was, a fan favorite in the Dark Tournament. The girls were like, oh my god, that's Shishi Wakamaru. And Kuwabara was like, oh, whatever, that guy can't beat me. And, he didn't even have to use the Banshee Shriek. He used the Cape of No Return on Kuwabara and got him, like, out of there. They were like, where the fuck did he send Kuwabara? I don't know. It's the Cape of No Return. And Kuwabara showed up at the old stadium. See, they went to a new stadium for the semifinals and the finals. And they were like, the girls were at the old stadium. They were like, yo, where's everybody at? And Kuwabara was like, oh, shit, I'll show you where they're at, Damn, I lost the battle, he got me the fuck out of there. And they was like, okay, then follow me, the stadium's over here. And he took them bitches there, and he was just, spectating then. And then Genkai ran the shit with him, and then ran it with somebody else. And then after that, Kuwabara was waiting in the hotel for the finals. Um, it was against Team Seguro, of course. That's why they came there to the Dark Tournament. Um, Yusuke woke up and was like, where's Genkai at? I have a feeling that something bad's gonna happen to her. And he was like, well, she told me to watch you and stuff. He was like, what? Man, I can't fucking be here. And he like darted away from Kuwabara. Kuwabara was like, man, things are acting strange around here. People are acting weird on me. Um, so then Genkai ended up dying. But Kuwabara didn't know. Yusuke kept it like hush hush. And he was like, Genkai is just sick. She's, doing other things. And then Kuwabara was like, well, damn, we gotta like need the, all the help we can get, And Yusuke's like, oh, we'll just have to handle it without her. They go into the dark tournament, like the finals, and then Kuwabara ends up fighting against Elder Tagoro, and he has the ability to switch where his fucking organs are, and he can turn into things too. Like his body's like flexible and malleable to like turn into different objects and all kinds of shit. He can spawn a new head, but like have his like he can do dumb shit like have his heart where his dick is and have his like brain where his fucking ass is and all kinds of stuff. You don't know where you're like, because like Kuwabara went in to like try to stab him in the chest, right, and or like in the head, and it wasn't there. It was somewhere else. His organs were somewhere else. And then he was like, if I can't like cut one part of you, I'm gonna smash all of you. And he manifested a hammer, or not a hammer, but a net, like a tennis racket, and he smashing him like he smashed him into the fucking ground. And that's how he won against the Elder Tagoro after he got stabbed by his fingers and shit. Like he had a lot of blood loss, but he won that fight. Then, Tagoro came in and finished his brother off, and he came out from underground, or he thought he finished his brother off. Then Tagoro fought Yusuke, and during that fight, Tagoro got powerful, more powerful. Yusuke did too, but not, he needed a little extra boost. So, like, he started fighting. Yusuke did, um, for him to seriously start like taking the fight seriously. So, Kuwabara stepped up and he was like, "Hey, I'll fight against this guy if Yusuke's like his head's in the ground, because I'm a hero. I'm Kuwabara." You see my thumbnail for season 2 Kuwabara, boy. And Kuwabara's man. I will take you on. I would taste my blade to go. And he ran up on him like, and then the girl was like, and he tried to like stab him, or he did actually, but it was just ketchup packets that he like penetrated through. Somebody's grabbing my dick, man. I'm out to move, y'all. I think I'll move too. But so that happened, right? And oh, wow. But yeah, so they were um um but um Kuwabara was then like, okay, I dead, so Yusuke thinks that I'm dead. And then he got mad and ended up defeating Tagoro. And then he like woke back up, and Yusuke was like, I was crying for no reason. Man, you're a bitch. I'll whoop your ass. And he was like, well, it worked, didn't it? Didn't it like get you like to like think more, and or not even think more, but get the job done? And it's like, okay, I can't fucking bitch too much about that. But then they got out of there. Genkai was gone. She was dead. You know, but that's what he did, because like Yusuke didn't tell Kuwabara that Genkai was dead, so he was like, I'm gonna get back at him by like acting like I was dead to fuck with him, because they fucked with Kuwabara. Kuwabara didn't know that Genkai was dead. Like he did, because he could sense like things, but like they were kind of like acting like he was just that dumbass. Like, yo, you're just that boy that is here to fight. Don't like try to read into shit too much. But they were fucking with him and shit, and he knew that they were. But then the chapter black happened. So during this time, Kuwabara goes to find Yusuke at the mansion. Secret guy Sabushi City in it. Yu Kaito, some guy who like turns into people. I don't remember his name. But and then goddamn, is it Shino or Shino or something? I'm trying to remember those guys' names. I know what their abilities do, their territory. But he gets his soul stolen by Yu Kaito, because Kaito says, well, if you say the forbidden word in this area, the parameters within the parameters of these areas, your soul gets snatched from you. All right. So they couldn't say the word hot, is what the fucking thing was. They weren't paying attention, but well, Kurama was like smart, or he paid attention and he found out. And he said hot, and then his soul got taken from him. But luckily for him, Kurama smart and clever also, so he was able to defeat Kaito in a brain game, where they could say words, beginning with each letter of the alphabet. But like after each person said a letter of the alphabet, that letter was then like canceled out. And he made you kind of like laugh and other things and say other things, and he got a soul like his own soul like taken out of his body. And then they went up the steps, and when when Kuwabara went up the steps, he got taken by the other guy, the guy that can shapeshift, the guy who could turn into other people. So then when they get up to the top, the other guy who has Yusuke in a shadow, like basically he steps on Yusuke's shadow and he can't move. Didn't matter. He was like, "You're the most powerful person on earth, basically human, and you can't even move right now. I can step on your shadow and you'll be paralyzed." And he was, but then he like let go of him and he was like, "Hey, pick out which of your friends is the imposter, because one of them's an imposter." And he was like, he went down the line. He was like, "You ain't Bochan, she wants to show me her, just and other things." And she was like, "Oh man, I never told you anything." And then, he is like, "Man, I'll kill you if you think it's me." And then, um, and then, and then, Kurama he was just like, Kurama would never get caught. He's not that. He's not a dumbass. So he was like, it has to be Kuwabara. And he punched Kuwabara in the face, who he thought was Kuwabara, and it was the other guy. And he was like, oh fuck, he found out it wasn't me. And then he showed up again with Genkai. It was Genkai's ruse. That's what the episode was called. Um, and they were in line that a demon tunnel was being opened up, and a portal and other things. Um, Later, um, they found out that Kuwabara was needed in this operation, so Sansui sucked Seaman on him. Seaman was a boy around Kuwabara's age, but he didn't have no friends in school and other things. So or Sensui was like playing on people's like weakness, especially younger people, and that's how he got them together. Like so, the demon energy in the human world was thickening, and then when that happened, like people started gaining territory powers and different powers and shit. So Seaman ended up getting a power, and he hated people because they didn't understand him. School sucked, all kind of stuff. Similar to like other people, but he didn't have any friends around, so like he had other things, and then you know Shinobu came through and was like, "Well, we're humans, right? And we all do fucked up shit." Um, he basically convinced him that people should die. All humans should die because we're all fucked up. And Seaman's young and impressionable and other things, so he's like, "I'll help you bring about this, destruction of the world." Because we all do deserve to die. But then Kuwabara is like with his friends and he's going out and he's like, "Okay, since people don't want to have me around because my powers haven't come back." See, his powers didn't come back since the Dark Tournament. So he's like, "Okay, I'll just be a normal kid then and go out and hang out with my friends and shit." And then he was doing that, and then Seaman attacks, and his friends were like, they were caught in this water territory. They were basically drowning in water, and he couldn't, help them at first. But then his spirit powers came back. But this time it was more powerful. The Dimension Sword. See, in that territory, a regular spirit sword couldn't cut through that shit, but a Dimension Sword could. Um, Different properties, different dimensions. See that the water was, it wasn't just regular water. It was as if they were in another plane of existence, and he was able to cut through that. And they sensed that energy. They were like, "Oh shit, we found Kuwabara." And Kuwabara was like, "Yeah, I had to save my friends, and I also saved this guy who thought that he wanted to like fucking bring about the end of the world." But he's all right. He's on our side now. He didn't know what the fuck he was getting into. And then they were like, they woke up the next day and shit, and they were like, he was like, "Yo, Sentui's coming for Kuwabara. They want him so he can cut down the Kakai net with his power of the dimension." So they knew that he could cut through that barrier and let through the A class and S class apparitions from Demon World. And he was like telling them that, and they were like, "Oh shit." They ended up taking Kuwabara though, Sensui and Amanuma and Gourmet. I used to was riding to get him on a bike, but Kuwabara was like in the tunnel, like where they were at, just watching the demon gate open. He was like in a boat with his mouth tied up, all tied up, on this little rowboat on some water under the ground. And they found him and they were like, "Yo, Kuwabara, wait there. We're gonna be there for you and other things to get you out of there." And then Kuwabara got freed, and then but he didn't get freed again because Itsuki used his um, demon pet called a dimension beast to swallow him and Kurama and Hiei and Sea Master, Seaman up. Um, and they were watching the battle between Sensui and Yusuke from the sidelines, and then doing that, um, they witnessed the death of Yusuke, and then they like hopped out of there, and they were like, "We're gonna get revenge on you, you know." We won't let you like get away. And then he went to Sensui went into Demon World and they went after him. They were like, we don't give a fuck. You killed our friend. We're coming to get we're out for blood. And Hiei and Kurama couldn't get past the Kakai net, so he actually ended up ripping the Kakai barrier, but for their purposes, not for Sensui's purposes. And then they get to Demon World and they're fighting against Sensui, and Sensui even remarked that if I get hit by that, even that sword that you have, Kuwabara, can do damage to me. So I have to like make sure I'm not like playing games too much, and allow your attacks to hit, because I could actually get scratched a little bit. But Kuwabara is not as coordinated as like Hiei or Kurama at like combat and other things, but he was still fighting anyway. And it allowed enough time for Yusuke to show up. And when Yusuke showed up, he was just a spectator again. And then that's when Kuwabara's story basically ends, because then Yusuke um, defeats Sensui, and then he has this way about him. He's like, I need to figure out what this demon is in me, because now I'm a demon. I have the mark of the Mazaku. And they were like, okay, well, you have to travel to Demon World, or you could travel to Demon World and see what's going on there, since anything on Earth can't fuck with you anymore. And he was like, all right, I'll do that. But maybe I should, they were like, talk to Kuroko first. And then, he did that, and then he made the decision that he would go to Demon World for 3 years and then come back. And Kuwabara was like, well, damn, I'm like the only one who doesn't get to go. I'm like the ugly girl at the dance. Nobody wants to fuck with me anymore. You guys are doing all this shit. You guys are getting calls to Demon World, and I'm just some human that's over here, you know. I'm just that boy that, is the weak link. And he was like, you know, Yusuke just like, you better hit them books, and by the time I come back, you better be going to college and other shit, Kuwabara. And then Kuwabara was like, man, that shit's weak. But you better not die, and you better come back the Demon King, king of all the demons. So then, everything happens with Yusuke in Demon World, and, that happens for a while. Kurama ended up coming back to the human world and letting them know that, Yusuke's, in Demon World. He is like that in Demon World. He's, doing things. He's working for Enki, doing, like, little, like, patrols, making sure humans ain't going there and other stuff. And then Kuwabara's like, it's been like 3 years. It's been so long since I've, done shit with y'all. We're going to Genkai's compound and other things to, see what she wants. She was like, I'm old and other things. I want all this estate to be yours. All the trees for miles and miles, and all this land is yours to have. I need to pass it on to the next generation, thing. They were like, okay, this is cool. And then they went to the beach, and then Yusuke showed up at the beach, and he was like, hey, I'm back. And then they were like, oh shit, you're actually back. And then that's how it ends. And that was the story of Kazuma Kuwabara. Not as cool as Yusuke or the other guys, but he still, had an important role for a little bit. And he was there for his friend who he cared about. But that's it. Stay cool, Clown on the corner.